Max Olson, theathletic.com, covers college football with us on 365 Sports. I had told Max that today was our third year of being on the air, and I'll never forget. I was driving from Sam's Club on 35, headed north on Waco to go back to the condo, and Max and I talked on the phone, and he wanted to know if we were going to be doing anything, and Max committed to being with us as soon as we started the show. You remember that, Max?
I do. Am I like a Mount Rushmore guest for this show?
Yes, you are.
You are.
You are.
Wow. I'm honored. That means a lot to me. Even if you tell that to, 10 other people, like I still means a lot to me.
Well, no,
maybe it's not Mount Rushmore. Maybe it's like Yankee Stadium and Monument Park.
Or Washington, because they have like
lots of them.
The Washington's football stadium has like 800 people in their Hall of Fame. It's not very it's elite, but it's not.
Okay, well, next time I come through Waco, we can do if you want to retire my jersey or something, we'll figure something out.
All right, so Stuart Mandel and others have now put up about the Pac-12. They're going to move this thing back, the timeline now, maybe late April, maybe May, sometime this summer. And it all depends on who you ask. Is this a little bit, in your opinion, disconcerting or not?
I think, what's really important to the Pac-12 is that you guys have several more weeks and maybe even months of
content,
time to content and conversation about this and speculation. That's the end game here. Everyone's enjoying it. Everyone's having a good time. They just don't want this thing to end. I think that's, I don't know. It doesn't, I mean, at this point, I've lost track of how many, self-imposed deadlines there has seemed to be for this process that you remember this began in July with the Pac-12 saying that they were going to get this process started early. I mean, obviously the Big Ten deal took quite a long time. And Big 12 didn't take very much time because they were renewing with their current partners. It's hard to put a timetable on what's normal and what's abnormal with this stuff. But certainly, if this were going great, this would probably be over by now. You would think, right? You would think, and I think that certainly some Pac-12 presidents in the past have said it was important to get this thing done in March or April or whatever. And so here we are. Doesn't seem like it's close. And the mystery here continues to be who are the partners.
Yeah, Max. It seems to if I had to guess, and this is just a guess, is that. This is a league that is probably not all on the same page about what their expectations are or what they're going to get. And you've got 10 presidents and universities here who, all maybe have slightly varying goals, which is hard to get a deal done because I'm sure there's something out there they could have taken now, but it's probably not acceptable to everyone.
Yeah, and we've talked plenty about I can't imagine how many times we've talked about that. Linear versus streaming and what do you need, what's okay, what's not good enough and all that stuff. And yeah, it's, I think it's interesting too, the timing you get into this now. Certainly ESPN is heading towards some big layoffs and stuff like that. They've got some big properties coming up, obviously CFP expansion and NBA and stuff like that. So you kind of wonder, where does ESPN fit into all this? It's always kind of been assumed Fox was not in this conversation, but that ESPN was, that's the part you kind of wonder about is if ESPN and Fox are not in this, what does that look like?
Max, I saw there was the story out on the recruiting expenses from last year, USA Today had it out there where Georgia was number one. I don't think to anybody's surprise, but it was interesting to see just the variation from number one, Georgia, who spent $4.5 million on recruiting expenses, just to number 10, Florida, which was 1.6. So they spent $3 million more than the number 10 team, much less the rest of the country. Honest question, what does that $3 million entail? What is Georgia doing that is so much more expensive or creates that much more of an expense versus even some of the other top 10 schools who are spending $1.5 million less?
It's a great question. And I've looked at those numbers in the past. I don't think it was maybe USA Today, but maybe another organization that collected them. And I think Georgia was the first one to take it to $2 million, and I'm sure they were the first 6 to $3 million too. And now we're at 4. And it's nuts when you think about, honestly, for the schools in the state of Texas, like the budget shouldn't really be that crazy when it's all like mostly going to be in-state recruiting and really close by recruiting. And like you would think with Georgia, right? Like they just get so much talent from their backyard. They're like, how could you possibly spend that much? But they've under Kirby Smart, they've tried to be number one in that for a long time here. I would assume there's like just stuff like private jet time and stuff like that adds up. But no, I don't understand how I certainly don't understand how you get to that number, especially with the, recruiting graphics are free. A lot of this stuff doesn't cost money, but $4 million is like just insane.
It doesn't surprise you that it is like if you had had me guess which school was spending $4 million and which coach had said it, Kirby Smart is so enthusiastic about recruiting that he would have been my first, second, and third choice.
Don't you want to just go on an official visit to Georgia?
Yes,
and see,
I do.
What kind of food they're eating?
Yes.
And what kind of cars they're driving you around in? What kind of it just sounds wild. That the bill could come out to that.
Maybe not cars, but helicopters.
But
somebody will put that on the chat.
Kenny Dillingham gave me these delicious tacos. Oh, really?
Yeah.
How's this filet mignon from a famous cow?
Chicken cordon bleu.
The Japanese Wagyu that they're serving there has to be unbelievable.
Speaking of that, we have a TexasBeefHouse.com with Wagyu Cattle Ranch and also Steaks is one of our newest sponsors. So, Max, I wonder, do you think we'll ever get to a point where we have coaches who have salaries, and sometimes there's something built in that they have to be the highest paid whoever. Do you think there'll ever be something where a coach also has it built into their contract that they also have to have the highest recruiting budget if somebody spends $1 more one year that it's got to go up?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting point. I think certainly in the SEC and I don't think it's hard for. Obviously Kirby Smart has won 2 national championships now. It's played for more. That creates an amount of buy-in in terms of we'll give you whatever you want. But I kind of think the SEC environment and just this idea that you're kind of constantly looking over the fence at Nick and you're kind of and then when LSU wins the national championship and stuff like that. I think that is a pretty powerful thing in terms of justifying we have to do everything we possibly can to win national championships and then to maintain the level that we're at.
We're talking to Max Olson, theathletic.com, right here on 365 Sports.
Max, has there been any intriguing stories coming out of spring football that have caught your attention?
I think that, with the portal opening up here next weekend, I think it's going to be interesting to see how many of these, I wrote about this recently, just kind of how many of these position battles actually kind of do get settled in the spring, whether that's by a coach or by a player just deciding to leave. This year, you've got some really big ones that are going to probably impact the national championship race. Georgia's trying to find a new quarterback. Carson Beck's probably the favorite there, but they've got some talented guys behind him. Jalen Milroe, this is his chance to win the job at Alabama, but they've got obviously some blue chip guys behind him, and can Ty Simpson, kind of win over Tommy Rees, the new OC there, and be the guy. Ohio State's a really interesting head-to-head between Kyle McCord and Devin Brown, 2 guys who have waited their turn behind C.J. Stroud. And, if either one of them hits the portal, everybody would be fighting over them. So you've got some of those battles that have got to play out here. Not as many in Big 12 country, but certainly nationally at the highest level. I think we're all interested to see who ends up winning the job at Ole Miss. That's another one, especially when you don't really think any of those guys would transfer. So I'm curious to see, do we get any resolution on some of those at the end of the month with the portal closing at the end of the month, or do those kind of roll into fall camp?
When it comes to Ole Miss, would you put a small, if you had to, right, put a small wager on Spencer Sanders or no?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that they brought him in for a reason. But there was times last year in fall camp when it was Jackson Dart versus Luke Altmaier, and it seemed like Altmaier might win the job over the guy they brought in from the portal. And so, I think Lane Kiffin doesn't really care. I think he'll go with the best guy, whoever is practicing the best. Certainly, I think the concern with Dart's been turnovers and just does he take care of the football, make better decisions in spring and in fall practice and stuff like that. So I don't know. I don't think they're making any promises to either of those guys or Walker Howard from LSU that you're going to be the guy. And so, like, you also wonder with the schedule they play, like, are they going to pick one guy and stick with him all year like they did with Dart last year? Or could this be a thing that kind of keeps, week to week, you're kind of figuring out what do we do here?
So yesterday, Paul's top 5 that wraps up every show was the top 5 best quarterbacks, or at least coming back in the Pac-12, and there could have been 7 or 8. They got a pretty good list. All 5 of them, every single one of them was a transfer. That's just basically where we are, right?
Yeah, think about this. The Big 12, Tyler Shuck is a transfer. Quinn Ewers is a transfer. Dylan Gabriel's a transfer. Sawyer Robertson wins the job. He's a transfer. I could go on, but I won't. But
Oklahoma's got the kid for, was it Tech and Michigan?
Chandler Morris is a transfer.
Chandler Morris, yeah. Golly. They're everywhere.
It's crazy, especially Pac-12. Pac-12 is like especially, pretty especially loaded year in terms of guys coming back in the Pac-12 when you've got Williams and Nix and Rising, those guys back. How did you end up sorting them, Paul?
It was Williams, Nix, Rising, Penix, and Cam Ward was the 5th one.
And then we don't know what to do about Sanders. I think that at Colorado, I think that Shedeur, like, can he make the jump and be super productive? Did they add enough pieces this offseason that they can have a pretty solid offense there with Sean Lewis? That one, I mean, there's a bunch more guys there that I think could be pretty fun to watch. And then there's DJ at Oregon State.
Yep.
Yeah. That one was almost 5th, but the debate on him was, well, he had to transfer to Oregon State for a reason.
Yeah. And in Arizona State, isn't Dillingham have a new quarterback? Yeah, that's another one. It's just I was sitting there watching, and I was like, transfer, and then I knew Caleb was going to be the number 1 transfer. It's nuts. We just, Baylor men's basketball had 2 guards that are entering the transfer portal. They'll end up adding 3 or 4 of their own, but it's just nuts when you see the list of people who have already contacted a certain player, LJ Cryer, and it's a who's who of basketball. So the higher the NIL, it's going to be a bidding war for just a guard. He's pretty good, but a guard.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's true. I think, like, the amount of, like, I don't cover basketball. I'm sure it's, like, worse in some ways than basketball, but you hear that from coaches more and more that, like, there are guys that are just, like, starters, not like all conference guys, but are, like, good starters that are, like, getting contacted about, hey, would you want to come here and stuff like that? Like, it's not just like, the very top of the pile there in terms of, like, the guys everybody would want. It's a lot of feelers being put out, and that's what'll make this basketball window and this next football window interesting to see who's just unhappy enough to make a switch, or even if they're not unhappy, just sees a better opportunity somewhere.
Max, got some spring game action going on. Not a boatload of games this weekend, but Kansas and Houston out of the Big 12. Just what have you sort of thought about the transition that Houston now makes? Dana Holgorsen really, I think, saved face. What was an ugly start really was kind of fine by the end of the season, but they're obviously losing Nathaniel Dell, and they're losing Clayton Tune, guys that have been around and been impact players. What are your thoughts on this transition, and do you expect it a little bit of a hiccup, at least initially, like you saw with TCU when they tried to enter example in schools like that?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think Dana Holgorsen does too. I think he's pretty realistic. I know when I saw him last summer, and we talked a little bit about making that jump, and I kind of just jokingly asked him, "You guys ready to, is your roster ready for the Big 12?" He's just like, nope. Like he knows, he's done it before at West Virginia. Like, he knows that it takes time. It takes, they're going to need to be able to recruit to really have a legit 2 deep team if they want to compete in the Big 12 race. And, the continuity obviously helps a little bit there. But, man, especially with moving up to the Big 12, like, that can be such a good job. And so Dana Holgorsen has got to make good progress here in year 1 and kind of show that thing's heading in the right direction. I think Donovan Smith, I would assume, will be the guy, the Texas Tech transfer there. If you get McCaskill back, that'd be great. But, yeah, it'd be interesting to see how they match up with these Big 12 teams, because I know that really seemed to be a frustration last season for Dana in some of the games they lost, that, man, you just felt like it's going to be a tough process here to make that switch and be able to play with some of these teams.
Max, thank you very much. Thanks for being a part of it from the beginning with us, and even where we were before. You've always been a go-to guy. You and Craig started doing a segment together from the radio days and now with what we do. Thanks for your time and have a great Easter weekend.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much. Max Olson, theathletic.com, with us on 365 Sports. By the way, Brooks Koepka is now tied